Welcome to the Inside Out Money Podcast.
Can't even recognize this place. Too many pieces of our past mistakes.
Hi, I'm Maggie, and I believe real change starts from the inside out. So let's work together to improve our money and our lives from the inside out. We will explore all things money and our relationship with it. Join me each week with a rotating set of co-hosts, friends, and interviews. Let's jump in.
It's time, we going round and round and round and round.
Hey, Andrew.
Hey, Maggie.
What's going on?
Welcome to episode 6.
Yeah, I'm impressed you could bust that number out, because for a minute I was like, episode?
I'm looking at the show notes.
Oh, well, yeah. Hopefully I put the number in right.
And I was just talking to my brother-in-law because he just sent me a picture of a screenshot of him listening to episode 5 on his way home from work today. And I said, oh, great. We're actually recording episode 6 tonight.
Nice. I was thinking about how you must have more, I was going to say like bling or medals, but what do you physically get when you win a cycling race? Like, what do they give you? A cup?
I got a jersey.
Is that always the prize?
No, not always.
Okay.
In some of the bigger races, they give jerseys out. So that's cool. And then some medals. They give you a medal too.
You won multiple things this weekend, right? How do you do? I didn't know you could do like multiple races in one weekend. It was impressive.
Yeah. I was in Alabama racing. I did a time trial on Saturday. I got third overall. I won my age group on that. But I achieved a lifetime PR goal. I've been trying to do it for 25 years, and I finally hit 30 miles an hour on an average for the TT.
What does TT mean? Because I think of like little kids being like TT or like
time trial. So it's just you against the clock.
Okay. Wait, you're not, there's not other people there. You're separately racing?
It's individually racing. You go off in 30-second increments. And so it's just you against the clock.
What if you like slow down? Doesn't the other person catch you, or everyone, you know the speed of everyone well enough that?
No, most of the time trials are either out and backs, or this one was a point to point. So you're actually just passing the people who are ahead of you that are going slower, or you're getting passed. Typically I'm not getting passed, but
you're doing the passing.
That's the goal. Yeah.
When you posted that, I saw it online over the weekend. I was like trying to picture that speed, and I was like, I'm not even allowed to drive that speed in my neighborhood. So, and I was behind a bike today for a while on the way to taking the kids to swim practice. And like in the Tesla, people can't hear you, I think, because he was like in the middle. I was just like, you're going to get hurt, dude. But he was going so slow. And it was like a slight hill, but I was like, I mean, my kids can go up the hill faster than you. And it was just like over a hill on the other side. So I could not pass him. And I was just like, okay. He was going 8 miles an hour for comparison. Cause I was like, I feel like you're going really slow. And then I was like looking at the speedometer to check. And I think it was like 7 or 8. I was like, this is very slow, dude. Like, we're going to be here for a while. I'm late for swim practice. But I was thinking about your 30 miles an hour and being like, that's really fast. And you were doing it nonstop for 30 minutes.
25 minutes, yeah.
What's an extra 5 minutes though at that point, you know?
At that pace, it's hard.
You're not just winning races in your age group. You're not just like, you know, you're not like in the oldest man race group age. You're in the which age group are you in again? I'm joking about this.
I'm 45 to 49.
45 to 49. And you're on the young end of that, right? Age group. But you're on the pedestals with people who look like they barely got their driver's license. Like maybe they have a bike because they can't drive.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the guys who I'm racing against are in their 20s.
It's pretty, which is usually like your prime, right?
Late 20s, early 30s. 20s and early 30s. Yeah, that's
quite impressive.
Thank you.
Oh, it's very cool. So, what else has been going on with you? Now that you're an official podcaster now, like formally, you can put that on your resume.
Yeah, it's been. I've had a couple of people reach out, so it's been nice. I got my brother-in-law's listening, so that's cool.
You got your first fan mail. You sent it to me.
I got my first fan mail. Yes.
Shout out to Tyler.
Yep. So yeah, it's good. And I said to you as we jumped on here that I was looking forward to the recording the session tonight. So that's a good sign. And we haven't talked since you launched. So congratulations on that. It was a huge monumental effort. I love the sign that your neighbor. It's your neighbor, right?
No, it's one of my best friends, like one of my childhood friends.
Oh,
I mean, we're still adult friends, but we've been friends since we were kids.
Okay, yeah. So love the new sign in the studio.
I'm pointing at this like we're on video, but I mean, we're on video. Hey, Andrew, what is wrong with this picture? Like, you didn't get the memo about what you need to wear to record this podcast.
I need an Inside Out Money shirt on, or
just a tie-dye shirt. It might be hard to tell this is a tie-dye shirt.
I don't think I own a tie-dye shirt.
Wow.
Yeah.
I should have asked you that question before agreeing to do this with you, Andrew.
Yeah, my kids have got one. I'm pretty sure Crystal's got one. My kids have done some tie-dye events this year at school. But yeah, I don't think I own a tie-dye shirt. So I'm going to have to get the kids to make me one.
Well, I'll make you one. Or you can get your kids to make you one.
Okay.
I am going to go out on a limb and say that I own 20 to 25 tie-dye shirts.
Wow.
I mean, I will go count and like post it on Instagram. And now that's like, if I counted my lifetime of tie-dye shirts I have owned at some point, definitely like over 30. But like when I was younger, every time I'd go on a trip with this particular group of girlfriends that I grew up with, one of them who had made this sign and is an amazing artist, we would always tie-dye. That was like our activity. Like we'd be like, who's packing the tie? Somebody would bring some article, sometimes shirts, sometimes like we've tie-dyed sports bras, socks, all sorts of things. Often shirts, tank tops. I've just always loved tie-dye, which is one of the reasons that it was a very personal thing to want to use tie-dye for Inside Out Money. But I own a lot of tie-dye, and soon there'll be some custom Inside Out tie-dye shirts.
Nice.
There actually already are some that you can get online. They're on our website. I
did see that. I'm trying to decide the color.
No, don't buy one yet, Andrew.
Okay.
For multiple reasons, because I should buy you a shirt. But also, don't buy one because there's actually a design I'm working on. I haven't really promoted the shirts much because there's a special design I'm working on that I'm not quite done with that will be ready in about a week.
Okay.
So wait for that.
My current t-shirt collection consists mostly of all these race t-shirts that I get. So doing all this racing, I get a t-shirt with most of these races. So
those are pretty cool. They're like right up there with tie-dye.
Yep.
You worked much harder for your shirts than.
So before we jump in, a couple quick things that happened in the last week since we launched. One, I discovered that Greg and Crystal have something in common. They both don't listen to the podcast.
Oh, she's only had one to listen to. She still hasn't listened to it?
That absolutely. I literally laughed out loud when Greg said that. Or you said it or Greg said it. Somebody said it.
I said it to Liz when she said something about Greg. And I was like, don't worry, he doesn't listen.
Okay,
he did once listen, to be clear, early on when it was a new, fresh thing. He loved and supported me. And then when we had 200 episodes, that's a lot of time. And I think he was like, I live with you. I'm good.
He was over it. Yeah.
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 And he would hear me talk about things and who I interviewed and people. So she only had 1 hour, not even a full hour she needed to listen to. And she could do it on like 2 times speed.
Yeah. I'll suggest that to her.
Does she has just been busy, or does
she's been doing a lot of baking. She's been doing a lot of baking, and
you know what you can do while you're baking? Pop in some headphones.
Yeah. Well, what's funny, she was doing some baking last night, and I came down and she was listening to something else. I was like, all right, I see how this is.
So yeah, you got time to listen to things, but not.
Tonight she told me she was going to binge listen. So she's like, I'll get a couple episodes together and then I'll binge listen it.
Yeah, maybe she was just waiting for your second episode. That's a plausible story. Well, let me tell you who's not getting an Inside Out Money shirt. Your wife.
My final note before we jump in is I wanted to congratulate you on starting. I don't know if you completed your homework, but congrats on starting your homework.
I did. I can't believe I forgot to tell you. That was going to be the first thing I told you. I finished it and I meant to post it on Instagram. I don't think I even posted that. I posted I was listening to it.
Yeah, you were listening to it. Yeah.
I finished it. Just to be clear, the homework was due by now because that was what we agreed upon before the next episode. I finished it 3 or 4 days ago. So I was on top of my homework. I was not a procrastinator here. You want my review?
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
It was a great book. I wish I had read it 20 years ago. I wish you had given it to me in my wedding, as you do with wedding gifts. And it was really good. It was what I suspected, which is why I hadn't prioritized listening to it earlier. It was a lot of stuff that I've already kind of knew and have absorbed, but in the past few years, right? I didn't know those things 5 years ago even. And so it was a lot of like what I had already just read about and slowly been learning and even read, some of his blogs. Overall, I love the spirit of it. And I can see why everybody recommends it as such a foundational book, which is perfect for today's topic, actually.
Yeah, there's not a ton of what I call new ground in it, but he packages it in a way that is very easy to read.
Yes.
And it covers all the bases really well. And he doesn't overcomplicate it, right? It's the title, The Simple Path, right?
Yes, exactly.
So I think that's why it's my go-to recommendation for people.
Yeah, I did learn a few new things, and it reinforced some things that just remind me I need to spend more time on. Not now, but in the coming years. And I actually want to go back and reread and re-listen to certain sections. And by the way, I did the audiobook.
Yeah.
After, just to be clear, I know you bought me the physical book. I still cherish owning the physical book, and I will always remember that you gave it to me.
It's a good reference for you.
Yeah, and actually, that's a good point, because there's a couple sections I want to go back and I like to reread, like physically certain things. But there's some stuff on taxes, which I'm very interested in. It's one of my big goals. Well, it was one of my big goals my first year in retirement. Now it's one of my big goals my second year in retirement, since I didn't get to it. Taxes, and then also withdrawal strategies, which is obviously something very much on my mind right now. And he just had some very things that I kind of thought were my approach to withdrawal strategies, but it was actually helpful to hear him methodically lay it out in a very easy to understand and digest way. Yeah, I just thought it was a great book. And again, the audiobook I really like because he reads it, and he's got like a very nice soothing voice, very calming and just peaceful, and he just sounds like a very kind person.
Yeah, I also I highly recommend listening or watching his talk that he gave at Google, and it's an hour-long video on YouTube, and I had never watched it. I watched it this week for the first time, and it's really good. It's a great summary of the book.
I think that's a great point, Andrew, and I'll put a link in the show notes to it. I will. You sent me that. I've not watched that yet, but that wasn't my formal homework, so I knew I could get to that at a later date. I got a fun goal for us, Andrew.
Let's hear it.
When I say that he has a nice, soothing, and just like kind voice, the reason I think he has a kind voice, aside from it sounds kind, is one thing I heard about him. I think I heard this from someone, but if not, I just told myself this story and made it up, and I'm pretty sure it's true. I heard if anyone, it doesn't have to be a big name, reaches out to him to do an interview, that he'll do it. And so you and I should interview him so you can basically meet your hero. I don't know if you'd call him your hero, but I think you'd be excited. I mean, I'd be excited to talk to him too, to be clear.
I would love to talk to him. And I have heard that same story as well, that he's very approachable in terms of coming on people's podcasts and talking about it. So I'd love to have him on the show.
So that will be an Andrew and Maggie Inside Out money goal, that we get J.L. Collins on the show.
Awesome. I love it.
Okay. In homage to him, this is a good episode topic where we're going to talk about the 10 foundations of personal finance.
Yeah, let's jump in.
Yeah, and I'm going to, in homage to you also, you wrote a blog post with this very title, coincidentally, in 2007.
Yeah.
I made this point in our first episode, Andrew, and I'm not like harping on it, but I'm going to say it one more time. I knew you in 2007. How did we not have this conversation?
We were too
worried.
Worked
together.
We were too worried about HomeDepot.com's conversion rate.
We were busy.
Or I was complaining about how you weren't driving enough traffic to the site.
Probably. Yep. We were in all seriousness, we were really busy and working hard, and we did talk about personal stuff a good bit, but not this, clearly.
I also think like back then, it wasn't as common for, money has always been a taboo topic, right? Yeah. But I think it's become less of a taboo topic in the last, 5 years. I think it was still very much a topic people just didn't talk about.
What's funny is back then, both of us had way less money. And so you would think like when you're both like younger and earlier on in your careers, it should be less taboo then.
Yeah.
But it's like almost like not until you become older and more comfortable and confident to talk about certain things that you're then able to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. As I was prepping for this, I went back and reread all of the posts, and I was if you'd asked me, Andrew, when did you write this? I wouldn't have said 2007. I didn't think it was that long ago. And you can definitely see my frame of reference was much more along the lines of preparing for retirement. The concept of FI was not on my radar at all. I was very much I was listening to Dave Ramsey, and I was focused on saving for my retirement, but Mr. Money Mustache had not been published yet. And it wasn't till a couple years later that the concept of FI came up. And one head, that became the goal, right?
Yeah, that's so interesting. I don't remember what I was reading, but I was reading about something that talked about how new of a concept early retirement is, and even actually retirement.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think I was reading about, was just retirement in itself was not, and the concept of a 401k and that they're like not very old.
401k is very young. It's 1974. I think Liz Gets Loaded had an episode on it, and she talked about that. Yeah,
It's impressive you can quote that. Look at our co-hosts all like.
I had a lot of time in the car this weekend driving to and from Alabama, and so I've been binge listening to Liz Gets Loaded.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see if Liz then binge reads your old personal finance blogs. I bet she might. Okay, so we could do an entire episode on each of these individual 10 foundations, but we're going to keep this very high level and hit these as a bit of a roadmap of the things you should be thinking about. And the thing I like about episodes like this is I hope this will be helpful in the sense that you're going to hear us talk about 10 things. There may be 5 you're already doing awesome on, and you don't really need to improve upon or anything like that. There may be 5 where you're like, oh, those are the ones I really want to focus on. Or there just may be a couple that you hear where you're like, I'm actually doing pretty good on all of these. I just really need to, tweak these 2 or these 3. And I think that's going to be different and unique for everyone, but it's helpful to think about all of the different angles and levers to focus on.
Agreed. And maybe we throw it out to the listeners and say, hey, of these 10, which ones are some of your favorites that we'll do deep dives on, and we'll do some separate episodes on. I mean, there's some that are I think are more meaty in nature than others, but these are the foundations that I came up with 15 years ago, and they've definitely served me well. I was pleased as I read through them again how applicable they still are, and really we decided not to make any changes to them. We stuck with these 10. There are a couple edits I may have made, but I think these 10 are all really solid.
Yeah, I agree. I read it and was like, I wouldn't touch any. I mean, we could all sit there and list out 11 or 12 or whatever, but yeah, they're all solid and they're foundational, which is the spirit of this discussion. Okay, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, number 1, the most important one: spend less than you make. It sounds simple. It's not. It's not easy to do though.
Yeah, it's shocking how many people aren't doing this and don't realize they're, it's simple math, but there's a lot of people when they start breaking down their expenses versus their income, realize that they're slowly spending more than they make. And that's why they're in debt. And again, it might seem obvious, but if you asked a lot of people, they wouldn't immediately connect the dots on that.
Yeah. If you can't get your lifestyle in line with your income, really nothing else matters, right? You can't invest unless you've got a gap there, right? Between your income and your spending. And that gap, that difference between your income and your spending level determines how long it will take you to get to financial independence. And so the smaller that gap, you're going to be on that road for a while. The larger the gap, and you're going to accelerate that. And that's what Mr. Money Mustache talked about in his famous post of the simple math of early retirement is it's all about that gap and the number of years. If you can get your lifestyle low enough and you can have a big enough gap to your income and that's your savings rate, you can make significant progress on the path to financial independence. And then I love the current book that's on my nightstand is Psychology of Money, which I am really enjoying. I'm almost done with it. I've just got a couple chapters left, by Morgan Housel. And by the way, his podcast is fantastic. He just started it. I've listened to all 9 episodes and fantastic. So I highly recommend his podcast.
Yeah, I haven't listened yet, but it is on my list.
He's got 2 quotes that I absolutely love in his book that really sum this up. I'm going to read the first one. Less ego, more wealth. Saving money is the gap between your ego and your income, and wealth is what you don't see. So wealth is created by suppressing what you could buy today in order to have more stuff or more options in the future. No matter how much you earn, you will never build wealth unless you can put a lid on how much fun you can have with your money right now, today. And that concept of the gap between your ego and your income is brilliant. I'd never heard that before, but it is so true. How much spending is driven by social pressures and things like that.
I think most people, I mean, this could be a whole episode in itself.
Yeah.
I don't think most people would admit or use the word ego though.
Yeah.
Right. I wouldn't even, right? When I think about certain things that I think I want that are going to make me happy, there are some things that I can admit are ego driven and caring about what other people think. One of the things that I often think about with this spend less than you make, and Morgan Housel gets to it in his quote there too, is a lot of people think that to reach FI or financial independence, you have to make a lot of money. And there are people who do it on a $30,000 a year salary, but they're living on very, very little. Or there's plenty of teachers who do it. It certainly helps and can speed it up if you have a larger salary, but there are just as many people with massive salaries that are spending every bit of it, right? So if you make $500,000 a year, but you spend $450,000 a year, you're only saving $50,000 a year, which doesn't even buy you 1 year of freedom if you're spending $450,000 a year.
Yeah.
But if you make $100,000 a year and you're living off $50,000 a year, you're saving just as much as that person with a $500,000 salary.
Right.
And you can live decently more than decently on $50,000 a year, depending on where you live and how many people are in your family and how many salaries and all that. But the point is, it is not about how much you make. It's about how much you save. And that's why this foundation of spend less than you make is so important.
Yeah. And then his second quote, which you and Mike talked a lot about on Friends and Fire, is savings can be created by spending less. You can spend less if you desire less, and you will desire less if you care less about what others think of you. And that's a really powerful statement. It's the less that you care about what other people, the less you have to think about projecting and what you're spending things on.
I think you are pretty good about not caring what other people think. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Like, you don't seem super status driven to me.
Absolutely.
It's one of the many things I like about you, Andrew. But it's true. You're not like, you can still appreciate, you used to have a Tesla. You can appreciate fine things, but you are very intentional about what you do and don't have.
Right. I'll give you a really simple example. I ride my bike into work and I'm in my full spandex. Most people would not be comfortable walking into their office in full spandex, right?
Yeah.
And like, I just don't care.
Which, by the way, that reminds me, we're not going to do it in this episode for the sake of time, but next episode, we got to do your routine and setup for how you change at work, because it's really fascinating. Yeah. I think people we're going to keep teasing it out for a few more episodes, but we'll tell you what happens after Andrew walks into work in his full spandex, because eventually he is like Superman. He like changes into, work clothes.
Well, actually, like I wear. We'll save it for the episode. But I get lots of comments in the elevator from people out. Carter's is not on the whole building, so there are other people in the office who don't know that I ride do it every day. And I've thought about just starting a Twitter account with what I get asked in the elevator every morning.
That's funny. You should say you're a bike messenger or something.
Yeah. All right. So that's number one. Move on to number two.
Yeah. Number two, create and stick to a budget.
Yeah. So I love the phrase, what gets measured gets improved. And so unless you know how much money is coming in, which most people don't, and then how much money is going out and where it's going, unless you have a full grasp of that, you can't improve things. You can't optimize. And so there are lots of ways you can do it. I use Mint. I think Mint's a great tool for aggregating the financials and just making sure you've got all the transactions.
We use Mint also.
You use Mint as well, right?
Yeah, because the price is right on Mint. I like it.
That's right.
It's free. It's free, guys.
Mint is free. It's an aggregator. You can pull in all of your financial transactions, and then I dump a Mint export into an Excel sheet. So I like doing it in Excel. So I've got my own records. So if Mint ever decides to shut down or something like that, I've got everything. And then I just do some more analysis on my own inside of Mint. And then I use an Excel. The way we do it is we do a rough annual budget, and then I've got monthly budget set up in just a monthly budget set up in Mint, and we use it more of as a guide than hey, there's a strict like we're not going over this limit type thing. I'd say probably in our 20s, I was doing it on a monthly basis, and we put most of our expenses on a credit card in order to get cash back or points. And so one thing I like doing is I like structuring the monthly budget so I have a number in my mind of what the credit card should not be exceeding each month. And so you put together the monthly budget, and that you basically put all of your expenses down that are not on the credit card. And then most of the credit card expenses are the variable expenses. And so I can just glance at my credit card statement each month to say, okay, if I had the number in mind that, hey, we weren't going to, we're targeting not to spend more than $3,000 a month on the credit card, then I can just know that, that's a quick gut check. And then each probably quarter to every 6 months, I'll pull all the transactions in and just see how we're trending on the annual budget, just to do a gut check. But the budget is super important.
That's interesting because my only slightly differing, I mean, in the spirit, it's the same thing, is I wouldn't say there's really any time in my life where I've had a true budget. I've tracked my expenses.
Yeah.
And that's what I really focus on. So if the word budget scares anyone off, the flip side of that, we actually did a whole Friends on Fire episode on the concept of expense tracking versus budgeting, and like, are they the same? How they're different? All that. If you are expense tracking, you usually, even if it's not exactly written down, you have a sense of what your budget is from it. Because when I think of expense tracking, it kind of ends up being a macro level budget in my head where I'm like, okay, I know we spend about $100,000 a year as a family. And I know I've seen us get down to 80,000. I've seen us get up to 120, right? And I have a sense of kind of where I want to be and what levers I can pull and how much we spend on food. And I'm not looking at it, I don't think of it mentally as a budget, though sometimes we will, like in Mint, because we'll set actual budget categories. I just might want to make that point because I think if the word budget throws anyone off, the first step is you got to track your expenses and tie that to hopefully creating budgets, especially if you are living, if you have a very specific goal or you're living on a fixed income or something like that, like that's when you really need to budget and stick to your budget.
Yeah.
And if depending on your level of willpower and discipline, it can really, I personally operate okay without a budget, but many people really need to have that budget to stick to, particular goals.
Agreed. All right. And then number 3 is make savings automatic. So I love this one. And I think this applies to savings, but also even all of your finances. I try and have everything automated, right? Like every single bill gets paid automatically. I don't want everything is on autopilot. And on the savings side of the equation, it starts with the concept of paying yourself first. And that is the concept where you take deductions out of your paycheck to contribute to things like your 401k or your HSA, or you set up your pay. A lot of companies can offer 2 bank accounts where your paycheck can be split. And so a great strategy on that is you put 75% of it into your checking account, and that's going to cover your expenses, and you put 25% of your paycheck into a savings account, and then that's how you're automating savings. And whatever that ratio is, it's right for you, but it's a really useful strategy. So just having those automatic transfers set up. We talked about this a little bit on the last episode with VTSAX and Vanguard, and I've got every 2 weeks an automatic transfer that goes into buying VTSAX. So I highly recommend the automation piece and just not having to think about it, that making your savings automatic.
I mean, even your 401k is a version of automatic savings, right? If you're upping the amount of your 401k, it's forcing that amount. It's taking it first, paying yourself first. I had deferred compensation and I couldn't adjust that amount throughout the year. So whatever I set it at, I was literally forced on that one. At 401k, you can usually adjust throughout the year, but it's a version of automating your savings into retirement. But then there's other levels of automating it into your emergency fund, your investment funds, whatever, buckets of.
Other examples are the Roth IRAs, right? So 6,500 limit, you divide that by 12, you set up an automatic monthly transfer into your Roth IRA so that you're automatically saving for that. Another one is your mortgage. Tack on an extra $200 to your mortgage payment every single time. That's a way of automatically saving. So there's lots of opportunities for you to set up those automated pieces, and it's very helpful.
Does Vanguard let you set up automated purchases?
Yes. Yep. And it's super flexible. You can do monthly, you can do weekly, you can do twice a month, you can do every 2 weeks. There's a very specific screen in the account that you can do whatever you want.
I would love for someone to tell me if I just haven't realized how to do this at Fidelity yet. But I don't think Fidelity allows it. I know they allow it into some other type of fund.
They must.
I agree they must now too. At some point they didn't. And so, or someone tell me I'm wrong, and they always have, and I just never figured it out. It's not intuitively built into their system if they do. And it was funny, I was just Googling it while you were talking about it, because again, I'm fairly disciplined. And it's actually one of the reasons I love Wealthfront is and I don't use M1, but I know a lot of people use M1 as an investment platform too. They have great automation features. And if that's the sort of thing that helps you, like, go use a platform that has awesome automation features, because, do what works for you. But Fidelity didn't at once, or I've just, again, maybe I never figured it out. And it would be a nice thing to do, because I will tend to manually go in like remember to do it every couple weeks, which is not a great tool or not a great system, if you will. Okay. Number 4. You should say number 4 because I'm bad at this one, Andrew.
Number 4, accumulate assets that appreciate in value. And this is going to be things like cash in an online savings account. Maggie's a big fan of Wealthfront. I use
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm not bad at this one. I'm bad at the next one. Just to clarify.
Yeah, the next one.
But yes, I'm a huge fan of Wealthfront and really any high yield
savings. I use Ally. There are lots of.
What's Ally paying right now?
Not as much as Wealthfront.
I know. Wealthfront's been front of the game. Just to give you guys a sense, Wealthfront's paying 5.5% right now with a bonus that you can get for signing up for the first 6 months. And then it only goes down by 0.5 percentage point after your introduction.
I should probably use your referral link and sign up for an account.
It's nice. Even, I mean, the thing is, I wouldn't keep switching, right? Like I used American Express savings for a long time, high yield. They never were as competitive as Wealthfront. And so I finally was like, I'm just moving all my money to Wealthfront, but I wouldn't constantly switch for 0.5% here and there. But I've found that Wealthfront has consistently been, when the Fed raises rates, they've consistently been one of the first.
Yeah, they're like usually a quarter point better than most. Like I think Ally's at 4.25 now. So yeah.
Anyways, I'm a big fan of it. It doesn't matter what. If you have a bunch of cash sitting in a checking account, or a savings account that's not earning anything, that's a lot of money right now. I mean, we're in an unusual time in the economy where high yield savings are paying that much, because for a long time I was getting like 1% and that was good.
Well, we're kind of more back to the norm, right? The norm is typically 4 and 5%. It's been abnormal for the last couple of years when it's been paying 1, 2, nothing, right?
It's a fair point, but you forget what the norm is. Like I felt like this was abnormal because what I remembered is I've got just a recency factor of what's normal, you know? The other cool thing I'll say about Wealthfront, this is not an ad for Wealthfront. They do not sponsor us. They have checking features on their high yield savings account now. And so I used to keep a lot of cash in Bank of America, and that's where all my credit cards paid out of. And often I'm putting a lot on credit cards because I'm trying to like earn, sign up bonuses and travel hacking. Now I have all my credit cards coming out of my high yield savings account, which has checking features on it. So you can hook up your credit cards to it. And it's awesome because you're not having to like move money around and try to, keep as much in your high yield savings account as possible. It's just I think it's a game changer to get the most out of your money.
Yeah, that's definitely beneficial. All right.
But what other sort of assets would you say appreciate in value?
Yes, VTSAX. so index funds, and then housing most of the time. Debatable.
Yeah, depends on your situation, where you live, how long you're going to stay.
Yeah, our second house, we lived in it for 12 years, and I had to write a check for $40,000 at closing. Yeah, we bought at the top of the market, and then the market crashed. So housing is I view the house that you live in is not an investment. An investment is VTSAX.
I totally agree. I view your mortgage and your house as a lifestyle choice, and you want to be in a certain neighborhood, and it's hard to rent in that neighborhood. And you like the spirit of you like the feeling of owning something, but I think renting gets a bad rap, and it should not. We could do a whole
100% agree on that
topic on this.
All right.
Okay. Number 5. This is the one I was saying I'm.
Do you want to take this one?
Sure. Because I can read it. I just can't do it. So number 5 is avoid assets that depreciate in value. So this could be cars, electronics, furniture, clothing, basically all consumer goods depreciate.
Yeah.
But I like to buy the newest iPhone, and I kind of like, ever since I've had a little more money in my life, I don't mind like newer cars. I'm not running through them. Like I'm not leasing. I'm not getting ridiculous on it, but
cars are the worst, right? They're the most depreciating asset that most people have. People underestimate the cost of car depreciation and how expensive it is. And so that's the biggest one. We could definitely do an entire episode on cars, although you talked about cars a lot on Friends on Fire.
We did. Yeah. I mean, Mike's car is still trucking. It's like older than I am, I think now.
Electronics is huge, right? The speed at which technology moves. So I had an iPhone 7 up until last year. Yeah, I was at least like 5 generations behind.
Well, yeah, I could go buy a brand new. I mean, when I left work, I went and bought a brand new iPhone, I think 13 Pro. I was like, it was well over $1,000. It might have been 1,300 or something. I do love it. I use it every day. I appreciate the camera, blah, blah, blah. All that makes me happy. But I could have gone and bought a few-year old iPhone for literally $200. Well, I do what I did for my kid. I bought them like a $200 iPhone.
So this is what I call all the stuff category, right? And you just have to be aware that these are these are assets that depreciate in value. The used market is the best way to look at depreciation is pull up the item and see what is going for on the used market, because you can see how fast something's going to depreciate, right?
2 days later, what does it sell for?
Yeah, I buy a lot of my bikes used because
that's pretty cool.
because I know I'm going to put a lot of miles on them, and I'll let someone else take the depreciation hit. So unless I'm getting a deal from one of my sponsors, I'm usually buying a bike that's used.
And you're still winning races with those used bikes, Andrew.
It's much more about the engine than the bike.
Oh, wait, are you the engine?
Yes.
The interesting thing you said about assets like this, I think you just said avoid them where you can, right?
Yeah.
And what I think is interesting about this, and this is going to be my own just excuses for myself, but it is a fair example, right? My point of view on this is I kind of joke like, oh, I like a new iPhone. I sometimes like newer cars, but I can afford them without going into debt and while still meeting my financial goals in life.
Yeah.
And that's often my big thing is like, I know for a fact, because I know what is inside me. And I know there's a lot of things that I don't care about spending money on. I know that I could be perfectly happy with a $10,000 car. My mom has my dad's old car. I can't remember what year it is, but it's definitely like 20 years plus old. It's a Toyota Highlander. I'm in it all the time. I would 100% be happy if I had debt, if I had to put a kid through college, if it's just anything I couldn't afford that was important to me in life, I would in a heartbeat have a car of that value and that age and be perfectly fine and happy and getting by in life. I just happen to be in a very, privileged, I've worked hard for it, but I also have a lot of privilege and am in a privileged position of being able to afford those things and meet my financial and life goals. But I know that I could do it without that. And if I were back in my 20s, I would have made some different decisions about cars. I bought a car right out of college when a couple years before I met you at Home Depot, and brand new Honda Accord. Bought it, knew how much money I was going to make, had no idea how much would come out in taxes though, and was like, oh, I would not have bought that car if I realized how small my paycheck was once it came after all of that. Like I just knew I knew the total salary amount. Anyways. Yeah, avoid assets that depreciate in value.
All right, that's number 5. Number 6, this is a really important one. Invest your savings early and often.
This is my biggest regret. I talk about it all the time. I didn't start investing until I was 36. It is all your fault, Andrew, because you didn't give me the Simple Path to Wealth in 2007, or you didn't send me your personal.
I didn't send you my personal. He hadn't published the book yet, so we'll say I didn't send you the link to this article.
Oh, he hadn't published the book yet. Good to know. Well, at least we all now know on the record, this is all Andrew's fault.
Yep. So time in the market is key to enable the magic of compound interest. And it's even if you start in your 20s with just a little bit, I mean, the difference that years make here it's unbelievable. And I love playing around with compound interest calculators. They fascinate me because every time I play around with one, I'm just blown away by the numbers.
Well, that's why the example you gave about cars, when they show how much that car is depreciating in value, the long-term cost of owning that car, because the alternative is you could have invested.
Correct. I love looking at opportunity cost, right? And if you could look at it with almost everything, but the big purchases are where it really matters. I even think about this when I bought my Tesla, and I think about, what if I'd put that money in the market back then, and what would it be worth now? And you're like, whoa, that car is a lot more expensive if you look at it from that perspective. So
sure, you could put it in Tesla too.
So I mean, just simple numbers. I love just using these simple numbers, right? If you take $5,000 invested at 8% over 20 years, it's $240K. You take that same amount of money and you invest it for 30 years, it goes from $240K to $600K. You do another 10 years, and 40 years equals $1.4 million. And then at 50 years, it's $3 million. I mean, you think about the Roth, let's just take the Roth IRA.
Well, this is why it's my biggest regret, just to clarify.
I'm pouring
some math around my regret.
I'm pouring salt in the wound here, right? I mean, I tell you, Roth IRA, the maximum you can put in is $6,500. And if you take that $6,500 and you put it in the market for 40 years at 8%, it's $1.8 million. $1.8 million. Most people can retire on $1.8 million. And I don't recommend this. I'd recommend doing the 401k match at work. Then you fund your Roth IRA. Then you go back and max out your 401k. But even if you just did the match at your company, right? That's free money. And the Roth IRA, $6,500 a year, most people's retirements would be okay if you start that in your 20s. That's number 6.
I'm just sitting here quietly in my regret,
sorry.
by the way. Keep going.
Number seven, live almost debt-free. So I'm a huge fan of living debt-free. Nothing will kill your financial position faster than debt. And it kind of comes back to that first point, foundation number 1, which is you got to live on less than you make. And by definition, if you're not doing that, you're typically taking on debt, and the debt is going to hold you back from achieving financial goals. And so resisting that urge to take on debt is so critical, especially when it comes to consumer goods and things like that.
And the biggest expenses that people often take on debt for are housing, cars, and then stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. So it's just crap you don't need.
The average car payment in the US right now is $750 a month.
That's insane.
That is mind-blowing.
My first car payment was like a couple $100. That was for my like brand new 2002 Honda Accord with a spoiler on the back.
So my why it's not live debt-free, it's why it's almost debt-free, is because the one exception I make, there are technically 2 exceptions. So the first exception is housing. But the key with housing is it's got to be reasonable. And I like using the rule of thumb that your house purchase price should not be more than 2.5 times your household income.
After taxes or before taxes?
Gross. I'll just use gross so gross household income 2.5 times. A lot of people will take advice from their mortgage broker or the real estate agent or the bank of how much they can afford. Don't ever let a bank or a mortgage broker or a real estate agent tell you how much house you can afford. They are always going to tell you the max because they're incentivized to sell you the biggest, most expensive home that you can. And this is coming from my mom is a real estate agent. So this is coming from someone whose mom is a real estate agent. And her and I talked about actually this weekend, and you've got to be really careful about people's incentives. And so one thing that has really paid off for us over the years is we've owned 3 homes, and we've always gone significantly lower than what the bank would have approved us for.
I will admit I didn't do that when I was 20. How old was I when I bought this house? I've been in this house for like 13 or 14 years. So I was in my mid to late 20s maybe when I bought this house. Didn't do that. It was a bit of a stretch for us at the time. And I never inflated though. That's the lifestyle inflation, which we haven't talked about, but is related to
huge.
Number 1 in many of these. That's my good thing that I did, right? Even though I did kind of max myself out early on, I continued to make more and more money, and I never upgraded my home.
And that's an awesome strategy. We should definitely do a whole topic on housing, right? Because it's the number 1 expense for people, and there are so many strategies. I think that'd be definitely a good one for us to dive into deep.
I agree. And we can throw in to pay off or to not pay off your mortgage too.
Yes. Yep.
That brings us to number 8. Just because the idea of like not inflating your home and constantly buying a bigger, better home takes a lot of discipline, and it takes you thinking about things in the right way. And number 8 is 80% of personal finance is behavior and 20% is knowledge and the numbers. Andrew, you wrote this back in 2007. This is literally why I called this Inside Out Money and what I want to talk about. So I love it. It's like fate that we're doing this now.
Yeah, this was something I realized back then. A lot of it, came from me listening to Dave Ramsey and me just realizing that the numbers are not difficult. The numbers are like just that Roth IRA example I use and the 401k match. Like the numbers are not difficult. The numbers, these are not. I think a lot of people in the investment world try and make things complicated because if it's not complicated, they can't charge a fee. But looking at the simplicity of the numbers, it all comes down to human behavior. And this is why this stuff is hard. It is, you just mentioned one of the things, the superpowers of personal finance, I call them discipline. The three superpowers of personal finance, which I think could be a good episode, is discipline, patience, and compound interest. Those 3 together.
Did you make that up?
Yeah.
I like it. Wait, what are they?
Discipline, patience, and compound interest are the three
I
superpowers.
like it.
And coming from my athletic background and cycling, like discipline is number one thing, right?
And you've got it.
Yes. And so that was a realization for me in my 20s that it's you got to play the long game here, that you got to be patient, slow and steady, and that's the hard part of the behavior. Everybody wants to get rich quick. Everybody wants to get this done faster, and there aren't shortcuts. There's no shortcut to this. Now, okay, you win the lottery. Like, I mean, the odds of the shortcut or the get rich quick are so small. Yeah.
And if you're banking on that and you're hoping on that, you're focused on the wrong
Correct.
things, in my opinion,
Yeah.
right? And perhaps in our opinion. And I think, for us, it's like you've got to get your mind right about stuff. Like Andrew said, the math is the simple part. And I think a lot of that takes some soul searching and figuring out like what is holding you back? Like what's your why? And there's two things that immediately come to mind for me that are good resources if you're personally struggling with this. One is very recent. It's Ramit Sethi's new show on Netflix called How to Get Rich. And he also has a book called I Will Teach You to Be Rich, which I haven't read yet, but I think it's on our both.
Yeah. So I've
list,
started
right?
watching his stuff on YouTube, and I definitely want to read it. And he did a Google Talk as well, which is a good video. And then he did an interview with Erica Kohlberg on YouTube. And then that was really well done.
He also has a podcast. And
yes.
it's good. He does. Have you listened?
I listened to one or two episodes of his early
it's mostly
stuff.
coaching.
Yeah, coaching, right?
Yeah, it's code, which is interesting if you like hearing, if it helps you to listen to other people. It is inspiring because he really does a lot of like psychological work on breaking down what's holding people back and what they're working towards. And because you can't just like snap your fingers and be disciplined. Right. You need to understand why you want to become disciplined. And another one I like is the documentary Playing with Fire.
Oh, yeah.
Which is really
Is that
good.
the one with Mr. Money Mustache in it?
He might be an interview in it, but he's not like a big piece of it.
Yeah, I haven't watched that either.
I haven't watched it in a long time, but it's really good. And it follows like a regular couple where the husband's a filmmaker and he's getting into it and kind of chasing fire. But the wife is like not having it. And she comes around eventually. And it just shows her. I think a lot of people can relate to seeing someone else go through things. And anyways, I would recommend both of those if people just need some motivation and a soft way of kind of watching other people improve their finances.
That's one of the things I liked about listening to Dave Ramsey back in the day was that part of it, the coaching piece, the interview, and people walking through their path, right? It's inspirational to hear how other people have done it, right?
Yeah. I never really listened to him. I just know he would always highlight people who like hit their debt goal. And
right.
It's a cool thing.
All right. Number 9, your retirement is your responsibility. And so this was, like I said earlier, I was focused more back then on the retirement goal objectives, but I don't think this is going to happen. And given the political situation in the US, that Social Security is not going to be there, but I'm not counting on it.
And it's going to be smaller. If it is there, it's going to just keep getting a little, etched away a little bit.
I agree with that. And so for my modeling purposes, I'm not counting on Social Security. If it's there and it happens, or if the laws change, it's great. But I'm not going to count on it. So, I think the point of this one is take ownership of your retirement and contribute. The simplest and easiest thing to do is to contribute to the tax advantaged accounts that we've talked about. 401ks at work that most people have access to, or a personal Roth IRA. The Roth IRA is a great savings and retirement tool. And then if you can get those two done and you still have some left over, then going back to your 401k and maxing that out. And I always remember that was a big goal of mine. One of my financial regrets was not maxing my 401k out earlier in my career. That's something that I think is a great goal for everyone to have to strive towards hitting that max each year.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my. I'll tack it on to my regret of not investing more when I was younger. But I got to the point where I easily could have afforded it for a long time. I just didn't realize the benefit of it, and I certainly didn't appreciate the tax advantage of it. I was never thinking like, like, oh, I can grow my retirement and pay less in taxes. Like win-win. What a great strategy.
And then
Okay.
the final one. And this one,
This might be my favorite
this
one.
may be the most important one.
It might be the most controversial one too.
So number 10 is, to be successful, you and your partner must agree on these principles.
Big.
This is huge. And the way I like to say it is, if you have a spouse or partner, personal finance is a team sport.
But if you don't, then it's like cycling, right?
Yeah.
You do it on your own, and good luck.
Yeah. But, I think, a lot of people that I think that are listening to this will have spouses or partners. And coming back to the sports analogy, you could have the Heisman winning quarterback. And if you don't have a good receiver to catch the ball, it doesn't matter. And so if you can't get on the same page around investing, saving, spending is typically the big one. If you can't get aligned and share the same values with the partner, you're going to be swimming upstream. It's going to be really hard to reach financial goals as a couple if one person's a spender, the other person's a saver. If both people are spenders, it can be difficult. And so this is big.
Yeah. It's interesting. For a second, I was like, I'm not sure what's worse. Two people on different pages, or two people who are both big spenders and not saving anything. They're both, at least on one of them, you've got one person, you got 50% trying, and you got some hope. I don't know. I was gone as far as to say, I think I said this in a Friends on Fire episode. I feel pretty strongly that I'm not suggesting if you're in a committed relationship, I'm suggesting that you need to focus on getting aligned around money, and that it can be really helpful to the overall health of your relationship, like invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're early on in a relationship, if you're dating someone, like not being aligned around money is a big red flag to me.
100% agree.
And you often think about the idea that you would never date someone for money. And I agree. I wouldn't want to date somebody because they do or don't have money. I want to date someone because, there's a million other reasons that are important for a good match, but someone who isn't willing to talk about money, isn't open about it, isn't transparent about it. You see about, their generosity, their responsibility with money, whether they spend money thoughtfully and intentionally, just all of these other things. They're really important to get to know, like how someone treats money. It's a look inside who that person is. And not to say they can't change. One of my favorite stories is Rich and Regular. Julian and Kirsten talk about this all the time in different talks.
I actually haven't listened to that one. They
have a podcast. I'm sure they have shared this story on their podcast, but they share it all the time in different talks. And Julian, and they talk about it in their book too. Julian tells the story about how when they first were dating, and I used to work with Julian and Kirsten, by the way, when they were first dating, they went on their first vacation together. When they split it, they're like dating, and they're like each paying for half. When they got home, somehow in conversation, I'm going to butcher this story, but somehow in conversation, it came up from Kirsten to Julian. He learned that she put her half of the vacation on a credit card, couldn't afford it, and was in debt now. Well, maybe already in debt for other things, but in debt as a result, and going to be paying off that vacation. And he was like so upset. They finally ended up talking about it. I'm butchering the story. You need to go read their book. It's awesome. And I'll put a link in the show notes, or go listen to their podcast. But the idea is I do think early enough on in a relationship, if you can't get aligned about money, and something in how they were able to reconcile and have open discussions about money made Julian think, okay, she's listening and we can meet our goals together. And this is something that she's willing to work on and that we can work on together. But if you can't even broach the subject with your partner and they shut down and they're not willing to talk to you, like that's a big red flag to me. And if it's early enough in a relationship, I'd be like, see it, dude. Like, not worth it.
Yeah.
Right. This is early on and we can't get this straight. Yeah. So
I've been super fortunate that Crystal and I have shared the same point of views on money. We're both wired in similar ways. We both have that frugality mindset, and we openly talk about things. You mentioned transparency. I think that is huge. Pretty much, like, I'd probably say our threshold is $400 or $500, right? I mean, anything that's over that, it's getting talked about. Right. Yeah. And, Crystal knows that I like to spend some money on some bikes, but I'll always make sure I review those with her. She may give me a little bit of an eye roll when I'm about to buy my fourth bike, but she is supportive of it. And, the same thing, like if, her hobby is her baking stuff, and, she buys a lot of stuff at Michael's, I'm going to support her on that. Right.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, you can talk bad about Crystal because she's not listening. Say whatever you want, Andrew. But all joking aside, I also am very appreciative. Greg and I are very aligned and talk very openly and can, even when there's things that we kind of have slightly different point of views on, we can talk respectfully and openly and have a meaningful discussion to understand where the other person's coming from on something. Yeah. And I think that is what is most important, is that there's open and honest dialogue and communication.
So even though, Chris and I are aligned on our money thinking, I refer to myself as the household CFO and her as the household CEO. She does not get involved.
And to be clear, the CFO works for the CEO.
CFO definitely works for the CEO. She does not get involved in any of the details. I do all of our taxes, and when I'm done with the taxes, I yell downstairs to her to come up to my office. She comes in, she looks at them for about 5 minutes, and when we come to the electronic signature page, I'm like, "Are you good with this?" She's like, "Yes, I'm good with this."
Yeah,
and we're done with that. She doesn't do anything in Mint. I do all the tracking. I do all the analysis. I have everything set up, even though I'm doing all the work, which I'm happy to do because I enjoy it. And I know that's where my interests and my strengths are. Whereas like the kids and school is she's a former school teacher. So homework, all of that, that's her lane. Even though I'm doing all of that, we're still aligned on the approach. And she could probably care less about the annual budget. And I always joke around with her on like January 5th. I'm like, time to come check out the budget. You psyched? And she just gives me an eye roll. Like, I'm like, let's go check out how our expenses were last year. And she could care less.
But you guys spend money similarly.
Yes.
That's a hard word for me to say. And I think that is where, even though Greg and I, there's different things that we value and spend our money on at times, the volume in which we're comfortable spending and our long-term goals of wanting to do all of the things that we talked about in this episode. Like, we're aligned to the fact that we'd like to spend less than we make. Well, now that we've early retired, we are spending more than we make, to be clear, but we're aligned to all of these things, and we want to track our expenses, and we like to discuss how we're doing against that, and we enjoy discussing and brainstorming if we want to save, if we feel good about how much we're spending eating out, or if we want to try to trim that back, and all of those things. And I think just like we said, those open lines of communication in a relationship are very, very important. And again, we could do a whole episode on this, and I'm sure we will someday.
I always refer to there's three big things in a relationship. You got to agree on kids, religion, and money. Those three. If you can't get agreement on those, when you're getting serious and thinking about marriage and things like that, if you can't agree on those three, it's very difficult to make it work.
It's tough. Yeah. Okay, I got a fun wrap up question for you, Andrew. If you could name a number 11, what would it be?
I actually was thinking through that a little bit because I debated combining the assets one, depreciate, accumulate, and I thought about combining that one. And if I were to think about an 11th one, I think it comes out, and we covered this, it's a little bit towards one, but like a concept out of, Psychology of Money is very much on my mind because I've just read it. So I think it's almost along the lines of that concept that not caring what other people think is could be number 11. Like it's so important to drive. It kind of goes back to like even the housing thing, right? People buy big houses to impress other people, right? They buy expensive cars to impress other people, right? Like it's so much of the spending is to impress other people. What's the favorite phrase? Like, stop buying things to impress people
things you don't need to impress people you don't care about. Yeah.
We'll get the exact quote, but I think so much of that is, if you think about what comes in as your income, but if you think about like your spending outflows each month, you've got your utilities and you've got the basics, you got, food, shelter, and clothing, right? But there's a lot within that monthly budget that is arguably spending money to impress other people, right? And so I think that one's key. Another concept that came out in this.
No, you only get one number.
Yeah, right. Okay, I'll stop it there.
I am intrigued now about what the other concept is. We got to leave some mystery for future episodes, though. But we
could do a topic. We could do a topic on the psychology of money.
We should. Okay, that quote, by the way, is stop buying things you don't need to impress people you don't like with money you don't have.
There you go. Perfect. I love that.
Couldn't tell you who said it, but it's a great quote.
I feel like we should do some Inside Out Money stickers with some of these quotes underneath.
Andrew, you read It's in the works.
Awesome.
Dude. The shirt. Well, sort of. Not this quote, but this is a good quote to pull on.
So those are the 10.
Top 10. I like it. Well, thank you for writing this in 2007.
And I'm sorry I didn't share it.
And not sharing it with me, but better late than never, as they say, right?
It's never too late to start.
You're right. That is true. I actually mean that. I always joke that it's my biggest regret, but it is what's the best time to start investing is now, is the other quote. So yes, at the time
when was the best time to invest? Yesterday. What is the best time? Today.
Yes. Even better. Okay. Well, thank you guys for listening. We know your time is limited and valuable. We really appreciate you spending some of it with us. If you have enjoyed today's discussion on the 10 foundations of personal finance, please give us a written review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We'd really appreciate it.
We also encourage you to share this episode with a friend or family member to encourage ongoing discussions about money. You can also subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have thoughts or questions, we'd love to hear from you, and you can leave a voicemail or text us at 404-981-3370 or hit us up on Instagram.
Or you can go directly to Andrew on LinkedIn because he will reply.
Yes. Or
I was joking, that's where you got your first fan mail this week. So yeah, pretty cool. Well, thank you, Andrew. Another great discussion. Look forward to many more of these.
Thanks, Maggie.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
I mean, I know I'm not allowed to do Inside Out. You banned me from it, so too bad. Your loss, listeners. Could have been good.